The second I walked into that ballroom, I knew I didn't belong. Chandeliers sparkled above me like frost trapped in crystal. Everyone stood around in their designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, swirling champagne, pretending their lives weren't built on appearances. I wore my formal military uniform, polished boots, flight insignia, medals I never asked for. Every step I took echoed across the marble floor like a challenge. I wasn't invited because they wanted me there. It was a formality, a checkbox. I caught the stares instantly, lips curling, brows raising. No one said anything directly, but I could feel the judgment, like I always did. Then I heard the voice that always managed to crawl under my skin. "Seriously," Austin said, just loud enough for everyone around him to hear. "Who wears a flight suit to a black tie event?" Laughter followed. Of course it did. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. I knew the smirk on his face by heart. My older brother, the golden child. Always so effortless in his cruelty. I kept walking, reminding myself I came for Grandma. Not for him. Not for any of them. Before I could reach her, my mother stepped into my path, draped in her pearls and polished detachment. "You couldn't wear a dress?" she asked quietly, her tone dipped in ice. "Just once? Like a normal woman?" I held her gaze for half a second. "I'm here for Grandma," I said. That was all. I finally reached her. She looked up at me, her eyes still kind, still proud in a way that didn't make me flinch. "You look strong," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "Thank you, Grandma," I replied. I helped her settle into a chair, straightened her shawl, and tried to ignore the burn of every stare still drilling into my back. My boots kept making that sound, hollow, deliberate, wrong to them. I'd worn them through sand and blood, but here they were just another reason to judge me. And then it happened. A tap on my shoulder. I turned and came face to face with a tall man in a dark suit. Earpiece, badge, White House seal. "Major Ellison," he said, "we need you to come with us. Now." My heart stopped for a moment. "Is something wrong?" I asked. "I can't say. Your presence is requested immediately." I glanced at Grandma. She gave me the faintest nod. I leaned down and kissed her cheek. "I'll be back soon," I whispered. As I followed the agent out, I felt every eye in that ballroom burning into my back. My mother's glass was frozen midair. Austin's mouth hung slightly open. No one said a word. They didn't know what was happening. And for the first time in years, neither did I. But whatever it was, it had just changed everything. They say memory comes in flashes. For me, it starts with the whine of the rotor blades slicing the air, the scent of oil and sweat, the sandstorm rolling in like a curse. We were deep in North Africa, classified location, high priority evac. I was leading the flight crew tasked with pulling out a small team of intel specialists after their base had been compromised. It was supposed to be routine. It never is. Midway through the approach, our supposed allies turned. The coordinates we were given? A trap. Gunfire erupted from the hills. One of the escort choppers took a direct hit and went down hard. The crew was alive, but pinned under fire. Command gave us orders to retreat. I didn't. I couldn't. I radioed back. "We've got wounded on the ground. I'm not leaving them." My co-pilot tried to talk me out of it. I ignored him. I landed anyway, straight into the storm of bullets. I remember dragging Lieutenant Knox through the dust, his blood soaking through my gloves. I remember laying down cover fire until my rifle jammed and switching to the sidearm like it was instinct. I remember the pain when our bird got hit. I don't remember the crash. Just waking up to silence, wreckage, and smoke curling into a blood-red sky. They thought I was dead. I wasn't. I hid for 16 hours with broken ribs and one functioning leg. Found one of the enemy's communication nodes by accident. Ripped out a hard drive with classified battle plans on it. I sent a signal flare into the night and prayed someone would pick it up. They did. 2 days later, I was back on Allied soil. The mission I had saved? Over 120 lives spared from a planned ambush. But the story? Buried. No ceremony. No cameras. Not even a press leak. Just a sterile letter handed to me behind closed doors. Thank you for your service. Due to the sensitive nature of your operation, your retirement is effective immediately. I walked out of that room, limping, decorated, invisible. No one knew what happened. Not my neighbors, not my friends, not even my family. They just saw me come home early, quieter, thinner. I never corrected them. I signed 3 separate NDAs. No interviews, no memoirs, not even a damn Facebook post. They stripped my wings without taking the weight off my shoulders. But I'd do it all again, for the ones we brought home, and the ones we didn't. Coming home should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like exile. I moved into a small apartment just outside DC, not far from the VA clinic. My limp hadn't fully healed, but I told people I was just taking time off. No one really asked questions, especially not my family. They didn't want answers. They wanted assumptions. Word got around that I'd left the Air Force early, that maybe something had gone wrong, that maybe I couldn't handle it. Austin didn't even try to hide his version. She probably cracked under pressure. He told our aunt at a barbecue. I overheard him. He said it with that smug little chuckle he'd had since high school, like he was reciting facts. I didn't correct him. At a family dinner a few weeks later, one of those just us nights where everyone sipped wine and talked about themselves, my father gave a toast. He raised his glass toward my siblings first. To Madison for her promotion at the firm, he said proudly. To Austin for making partner this year. And to Harper for, doing what she could. The room laughed softly. My mother nodded politely. I smiled. I excused myself early that night, saying I had a headache. But I didn't drive home right away. I sat in my car, engine off, rain streaking down the windshield, and I cried. It wasn't the words. I'd been through worse. But there was something about being forgotten in a room full of people who used to call you family. Something about hearing your name like a footnote. I had an email waiting in my inbox that week from a journalist who'd somehow found my name in a redacted document. He wanted to talk. He said he was working on a series about silent heroes. I stared at it for 20 minutes. And then I deleted it. Not because I didn't want the truth out, but because I had signed papers. Because I still believed in keeping my word, even if the people I'd bled for had no clue. Besides, it wouldn't change anything. Not with them. My family didn't want the truth. They wanted an image, and I didn't fit it. To them, I was the disappointment, the one who came back without a story. And I told myself I was okay with that. Until the invitation came. It came in a plain envelope. No return address, no stamps. Just a clean White House seal pressed into the flap like a secret waiting to be spoken. Inside was a single note. Be present. June 14th, 1900 hours, full dress. No exceptions. No signature. No context. But the moment I saw those words, full dress, I knew it wasn't just an invitation. It was a summons. I stared at the envelope on my kitchen table for hours, ran my fingers over the paper until the edges curled. 1,000 possibilities raced through my mind. Ceremony? Reunion? Closure? Or was this some cruel administrative mistake? But something in my gut said no. This was real, and it wasn't over. The next few days were uneasy. Something felt off. It started small. A gray sedan parked across the street from my VA clinic, then again outside the grocery store. Same car, same dent above the rear tire. Tinted windows, never moving. I was trained to notice shadows. This one wasn't trying very hard to hide, so I didn't either. On the 3rd day, I walked right up to it in the parking lot. Knocked on the driver's window like I already knew the person behind it. The window rolled down halfway. The man inside looked like every officer I'd ever met. Stoic, pressed collar, eyes that scanned everything. He didn't introduce himself, but he smiled. "You're harder to shake than we thought," he said calmly. "Who are you?" "Someone who remembers." "Why are you following me?" "To make sure you're not late." He handed me a small challenge coin, one I hadn't seen since my last deployment. Same squadron crest, same worn edges, except this one had new initials engraved on the back. H.E. June 14th. I opened my mouth to ask more, but he was already pulling away. No threats, no explanations, just a message. You're not forgotten. That night, I pulled my dress blues from the back of my closet. I hadn't touched them in almost a year. The fabric still smelled like the base locker room, dust, starch, adrenaline. I laid each piece on my bed in perfect formation, polished the brass buttons until they caught the light, straightened my ribbons, smoothed the sleeves, my boots. I took my time with those. As I worked, I didn't think about my brother, or my father, or the way my mother never looked me in the eye anymore. I thought about the ones who didn't make it back, the ones who didn't get second chances, and the promise I made in that burning wreckage when no one was watching. Be ready. The sun was just beginning to set when I arrived at the Capitol grounds. The sky burned gold over the white stone steps, and a military band played soft anthems that made my chest ache in ways I couldn't explain. I stood alone behind the main podium area, tucked among high-ranking officers, dignitaries, and a few familiar faces from across the service. I still had no idea what this was about. No one had briefed me. No formal orders. Just that letter. And the certainty that something big was coming. Then I spotted them. Across the crowd, about 10 rows back near the center, sat my parents. My mother in a pearl-colored coat, stiff posture, lips pursed like she was trying to breathe through judgment. My father next to her, jaw clenched, eyes scanning the stage like he couldn't believe who had made the guest list. And of course, Austin. Perfect hair, crisp suit, phone in hand like this was just another networking opportunity. They weren't here for me. They were there to support my cousin Jeremy, who was receiving a congressional commendation for his work in agricultural policy. I remembered the group email about it. I'd been conveniently left off the CC list, but now they were staring at me. My mother mouthed something I couldn't fully read, but I caught the shape of it. "Why are you up there?" I didn't respond. I didn't flinch. I just stood straight, heels aligned, shoulders square. A hush rippled through the crowd as a Marine stepped onto the stage. His voice carried easily over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. We are gathered not just to honor leadership in public service, but also to recognize a hero, one whose actions were buried for reasons beyond her control. A hero who saved lives in silence, who returned with no fanfare, and who kept her promise to a country that forgot to thank her." The silence deepened. Even the band had stopped. I didn't blink. I barely breathed. A massive screen behind the podium flickered to life. The Marine continued, "Tonight, we correct that mistake." I could feel the heat of every stare, including my family's, boring into me. Still, I didn't move. Whatever this was, it was no longer hidden. And part of me, the part that still carried broken ribs and sand in my lungs, knew the moment had finally come. The screen lit up with static, then clarity. A desert landscape came into view, blurred, shaky at first. Then I saw it. A downed helicopter, half in flames, black smoke curling into the orange sky. The feed was from a drone. I recognized the mission immediately. My mission. There I was on the screen, dragging Knox through open ground, bullets tearing up the dust all around us. His leg was limp, blood trailing behind. I was screaming something. I couldn't hear the audio, but I remembered every word. "Stay with me. We're not dying out here." Then it cut to another clip. Me, shouldering a rifle, firing from behind a piece of the wreckage. Smoke pouring from my side where the rotor had torn through my flight vest. Still standing, still fighting. A woman's voice came over the loudspeakers. A news anchor. "This never-before-seen declassified footage shows a U.S. Air Force pilot rescuing multiple personnel during an ambush in North Africa. Her actions, previously undisclosed, saved the lives of over 120 American and Allied operatives. Her name was kept classified until now." I heard gasps from the crowd. Chairs shifted, someone dropped their phone. I didn't have to look. I knew my family was frozen. Then another voice spoke. Calm, deep, unmistakable. "Major Harper Ellison," the president said as he walked out from behind the curtain, flanked by security and military officials. "Will you please step forward?" I moved slowly. Each step toward the stage felt like a lifetime. My boots echoed across the marble platform, same sound that used to draw stares. Now it silenced a nation. He met me at the center. I stood at attention. For valor in the face of overwhelming danger, he said, holding the Medal of Valor in his hands. For selfless bravery and an unwavering commitment to her fellow service members, it is my honor to present Major Harper Ellison with the highest commendation our country can offer. He placed the medal around my neck, then leaned in and said softly, "We failed to thank you in time. Not anymore." I didn't speak. I couldn't. Applause erupted. Cameras flashed, but all I could hear was the rush of my own heartbeat. Not pride, not validation, just release. After everything, the silence, the assumptions, the shame they painted on me, I stood on that stage, not just seen, but known, and none of them could take that from me. I barely made it off the stage before I felt a hand grab my arm. It was Austin. "Harper, hey," he said, eyes wide, mouth curled into a nervous half smile. That was, wow. I mean, we didn't know. You should have said something. I looked at him, really looked at him. This was the same brother who once told a crowded dinner table that I was a burnout with a badge. The same one who didn't return a single message while I was recovering. The same voice that laughed when I walked into the ballroom in uniform. I kept my tone even. "You didn't want to know." His smile faltered. My mother appeared next. Her makeup was flawless, but her hands trembled slightly as she reached for mine. "We thought you left us," she whispered. "You disappeared after you came back. We didn't think—" "You didn't think," I interrupted. "You assumed. You were embarrassed because I wasn't the version of me you imagined." She swallowed hard, eyes darting around like she was trying to find something to cling to. My father stayed behind them, silent, jaw tight like always. "I was out there," I continued, my voice lower now. "In places you couldn't pronounce. Fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. And when I came back, all I needed was space to breathe. But all I got was shame." They didn't respond. There were no words they could offer that wouldn't ring hollow. Behind me, the crowd had started to shift again. People clapping me on the shoulder, whispering congratulations. Some stood at a distance, uncertain if they were worthy to approach. But one woman moved with quiet confidence. She was about my age, dressed in black. Her eyes found mine instantly. In her arms was a folded flag. "Harper," she said, voice trembling. "My husband was in that convoy. You pulled him out. He wrote me about you, before he passed from his injuries." I froze. Then she hugged me. Hard. No camera, no microphone. Just a raw moment between two people who knew what loss felt like. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving me more time with him." I closed my eyes. My family stood behind me, still silent, still stunned. But in that moment, I wasn't looking for their approval. I had found something purer, the truth, and the peace that came with being unapologetically seen. The next morning, I went to Arlington. It was early, just past dawn. The sky hung in soft gray stillness, and the air had that cold silence only cemeteries carry. I wore my uniform again. Every ribbon, every patch, every scar stitched into the fabric. I walked row by row until I reached them. Knox, Ramirez, Jensen, Miller, names etched in white marble, perfectly spaced, perfectly solemn. I dropped to one knee and rested my hand against Knox's stone. "Hey," I whispered. They saw it. Finally. The tears came, but quiet this time. Not from grief, not from anger, but from release. I stayed there for a long while, letting the silence wrap around me like armor. Then I pulled out something I'd kept for months, a folded note from my old commanding officer. He'd handed it to me the day I was discharged. No words, just a nod. I'd never opened it. Until now. "You won't get the parade. You won't get the headlines. But you'll always be the reason others came home. And that matters more than they'll ever know." My throat tightened. I tucked the note under the folded edge of a small flag I'd brought, setting it beside Knox's grave. When I stood again, I wasn't the same. Later that afternoon, I got a call from a veterans advocacy group. A national broadcast wanted to do a feature on hidden service members. Real stories, real faces. They wanted to start with mine. I said yes. Not for the attention. but because someone out there needed to know that disappearing quietly doesn't make you invisible. That sometimes the greatest battles are the ones no one sees. That evening, I walked through downtown DC as the sun dipped behind the monuments. The city was alive. Cars honking, tourists laughing, someone playing guitar near the Capitol steps. I passed people who glanced at me with recognition. A few smiled. One man nodded, hand over heart. I didn't wave, didn't stop, just walked, steady and grounded like I always had. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. For years, they said I embarrassed the family, that I was too intense, too different, too quiet. But the truth? This uniform wasn't shame. It was sacrifice, resilience, love. Every reason I was still standing. And I wore it like the second skin it had always been. They once said I embarrassed them, but this uniform isn't shame. It's every reason I'm still standing.